Have you ever picked up something while decluttering and you thought about getting rid of it and then put it right back where it was? Maybe it was a pair of jeans that you haven't worn in years, or a stack of books, or a gift from someone. You look at it for a minute and you think, I just don't feel ready. So you put it back and you tell yourself, I'll come back to it. I don't have to decide right now. There's still plenty of time. And maybe there is. But a few weeks later, you come across the same item and you have the same exact conversation all over again. Should I keep it? Should I let it go? Maybe later. You tell yourself you're not ready and you put it back again. It's like you're stuck in a loop. And after helping hundreds of people declutter, I've noticed something interesting. The things that people struggle to let go of are rarely the things that they actually use. They're usually the things that represent something bigger. And until you figure out what that something is, it's very difficult to move forward. So today I'm going to talk about the 3 most common reasons why people get stuck and why understanding those reasons can make letting go feel so much easier. Because sometimes we're not just holding on to the item, we're holding on to what that item means. Your time and your energy are precious, and every item that you postpone is a decision that you'll eventually have to revisit. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to force yourself to make every decision today. That's not what I'm saying. But if you've picked up the same item 10 times and had the same conversation with yourself 10 times, then that item might be costing you more than physical space. It might be costing you mental and emotional peace too. Over the years, I've noticed that most of the items that people struggle with tend to fall into one of 3 categories. The first type of clutter is what's called fantasy clutter. Fantasy clutter is all the stuff we're keeping for a future version of ourselves, for the person we hope to become someday. So maybe it's the jeans that you'll wear when you lose 20 pounds, or the exercise equipment that you're going to start using. Maybe it's the craft supplies for that hobby that you're going to take up when life finally slows down. Maybe it's the stack of books that you're definitely going to read someday. What makes fantasy clutter so tricky is that it usually started with hope. Maybe you hoped to learn something new, or you hoped to get into a hobby, or you hoped to lose weight. Maybe you hoped that life would slow down enough to make room for this thing. So the item isn't the problem. The hope that is attached to it is what makes the decision difficult. Now, before we go any further, I want to be clear about something. There's nothing wrong with having goals. There's definitely nothing wrong with having hope. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to learn or try something new. There's nothing wrong with keeping a few things that support the future that you're working toward. The problem is when our homes become crowded with items that belong to a life that we are not actually living. Maybe we were influenced by an influencer to buy this stuff, but fantasy clutter really isn't about the stuff. It's about future possibilities and who we hope to become. And that's why these items can be so difficult to let go of. Letting go of the item can feel like letting go of the dream. And what started as a hopeful purchase can eventually become a reminder of a goal that we haven't yet pursued. So instead of inspiring us, the item quietly reminds us of something we haven't done yet. And that's when fantasy clutter can start taking up more than physical space. It can start taking up emotional space too. If I donate the jeans, does that mean I've given up on losing weight? If I get rid of the art supplies, does that mean I've given up on being creative? If I let go of the books, does that mean I've given up on learning? Of course not. But that's often what it feels like. So one question that I like to ask is this: am I keeping this for the person that I am today, or for the person that I thought I wanted to become? Because sometimes the most freeing thing we can do is give ourselves permission to be honest about the life that we're actually living right now. Letting go of the item doesn't mean letting go of the hope. Donating the jeans doesn't mean that you're giving up on your health goals. And letting go of the art supplies doesn't mean that you're giving up on being creative. Donating the books doesn't mean that you're giving up on learning. The item and the hope are not the same thing, so you're allowed to release the item and still hold on to the dream or the hope. If fantasy clutter is about who we hope to become, then the next type of clutter is about who we used to be. So the second type of clutter is identity clutter. Identity clutter is the stuff we keep because it reminds us of who we used to be. So maybe it's work clothes from a career that you left years ago. Or maybe it's hobby supplies from a season that has come and gone. Maybe it's sports equipment that you no longer use, or collections of things that once brought you joy, but now they no longer fit your interests. Sometimes when you let people know that you collect things, they give you a lot of those things, and maybe your interests have changed and you've moved on. You no longer collect that stuff, but now you're just surrounded by all these things from a previous version of your life. So what's interesting about identity clutter is that we're often not attached to the stuff itself. We're attached to the version of ourselves that used to use it or used to enjoy it. The item becomes a reminder of who we were. It reminds us of a role or a passion or a season of life or a version of ourselves that we loved. I experienced this recently when I was decluttering some educational books that I had held on to for years. So I'm a teacher. I have always loved teaching, and I had a big bin of books that represented a huge part of my life. When I started thinking about letting them go, I realized that the decision felt hard because I wasn't really deciding about the books. I was asking myself a much bigger question. I was asking myself, if I get rid of these books, does that make me any less of a teacher? And the answer was no, because those books were not what make me a teacher. My knowledge and experience and the people that I've helped and the lives that I've touched, that is what makes me a teacher. The books were just a reminder of that one part of my life. I didn't need the books anymore. I was never going to go back and reference them, so it was time to let them go. The sewing machine didn't make you a seamstress. The golf clubs didn't make you a golfer. The teaching books didn't make me a teacher, because the item is not the identity. The item is simply a reminder of the identity. And once I realized that, the decision became much easier. So sometimes identity clutter asks us questions that we're not quite ready to answer, like, am I still an athlete? Am I still an artist? Am I still a collector? Am I still the person who did that thing? And sometimes letting go of those items feels like we're answering those questions whether we're ready to or not. But letting go of the stuff does not erase the experience. So you don't lose the memories or the skills. You don't lose the person that you were. That part of your life still happened. The item is not the identity. The item is simply a reminder of one chapter of your life. And sometimes we hold on to things because we're afraid of what it means to let them go. But letting go of an item doesn't mean rejecting your past. It means making room for your present. If you've gotten any value out of this video so far, it would mean the world to me if you would hit that subscribe button so that I can reach more people and help more people. Thank you so much. Let's keep going. The third type of clutter is guilt clutter. And for many people, this is the hardest type of clutter of all. Guilt clutter is the stuff that we keep because letting it go feels wrong. So maybe you spent a lot of money on it, or maybe someone gave it to you as a gift. Maybe you inherited it from someone that you loved. Or maybe it's something that you feel like you should want or should use or should appreciate more than you do. Notice that word should. Whatever the reason, the item comes with emotional baggage. And every time you think about letting it go, the guilt shows up. I see this all the time. People will immediately start explaining why they still have something. They'll say, it was expensive, or my sister gave this to me, or it belonged to my mother. And sometimes what they're really saying is, I feel guilty about letting it go. The struggle isn't usually about the item, it's about what the item represents. It represents the money, or the relationship, or the memory, the obligation, the fear of seeming wasteful, the fear of seeming ungrateful. And one of the most common examples I see is gifts. Someone receives a gift, it's a gift that they don't like, they don't use it, they don't love it, they don't have room for it, but they still feel obligated to keep it, sometimes for years. But the purpose of a gift is to be received. The purpose of a gift is not for it to become a lifelong obligation. The person who gave you that gift wanted to express love and generosity or thoughtfulness, and that purpose has already been fulfilled. It was fulfilled in the moment of the exchange. You don't have to keep the item forever to prove that you appreciated that gesture. Sometimes we end up arranging our homes around the feelings or our imagined feelings of other people, how we think they might feel. Even people who don't live there, even people who aren't alive anymore. We keep things that we don't want or use or have room for because we're worried about disappointing someone. But your home should serve the people who actually live in it today, not the expectations or obligations or imagined feelings of everyone else. And the same thing is true for inherited items. The item is not the relationship. The item is not the person. And letting go of an item does not mean letting go of the love or the memories that you shared. Your memories don't live inside the object. They live inside you. If you love the gift, that's great. By all means, keep it. But if it's something you don't enjoy, you honor both the gift and the giver by letting it go to someone else who can use it. I also see guilt clutter show up around money. So people tell me, but I paid good money for this, and I understand that feeling. But keeping something that you don't use or love does not bring the money back. It just means that the item continues taking up space in your home and taking up energy in your mind. So one question that I like to ask is this: am I keeping this because I love it and use it and need it? Or am I keeping this because I feel guilty? Because guilt does not produce peace, and your home should not be a storage unit for guilt. You are allowed to be grateful and still let it go. You are allowed to honor the memory of the person who gave it to you and still let it go. You're allowed to appreciate the gift and still let it go. And you are allowed to make decisions based on what serves your life today. So let's bring this all together. Fantasy clutter represents who you hope to become. Identity clutter represents who you used to be. Guilt clutter represents who you feel obligated to be or what you feel obligated to keep. And while those three types of clutter look very different on the surface, they all have one thing in common. They're not really about the stuff. Fantasy clutter is tied to a dream about the future. Identity clutter is tied to a memory about the past. And guilt clutter is tied to an obligation or a feeling of duty. That's why these decisions can feel so difficult, because you're not just deciding what to do with an item, you're deciding what to do with everything that that item represents. So if you've been stuck on the same item for years, please don't beat yourself up about that. The fact that it's hard tells me that the item really matters. The goal isn't to judge yourself. The goal is to simply understand what is making the decision so difficult. So the next time you pick up something to declutter and you hear yourself say, "I'm not ready," you can pause and ask yourself why. Ask yourself what you're not ready to let go of. Is it the dream or the identity or the obligation? Because once you identify what's really keeping you attached to an item, the decision becomes much clearer. One of the things that decluttering teaches us is to trust ourselves to make the best decision we can with the information we have today. A lot of people have a hard time getting started decluttering because they think that they can't trust themselves to make the right decision. But the truth is, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to make every decision right. In fact, there really aren't any right or wrong decisions when it comes to decluttering, so you're not going to mess it up because there's really no wrong way to do it. You just have to trust yourself enough to move forward. And remember, what's taking up the most space might not be the stuff. It might be the weight of the decisions that we've been putting off making about the stuff. Remember, you are more important than any stuff could ever be. So don't forget to be gentle with yourself in this process. If you'd like a little more help, I have a couple of ways I can support you. I have a course called The Decluttered Move, where I walk you through the entire process of decluttering, downsizing, packing, and preparing for a move. I'll put that link in the description below. I also offer one-on-one Zoom sessions where I can help you get unstuck, whether you're trying to declutter, downsize, prepare your home to sell, or simply trying to figure out where to begin. You don't have to do this alone, and I would be honored to walk alongside you on your journey. And if you'd like to keep watching, I think you'll enjoy this video right here. I'll meet you there.